Okay, I know you've heard this before, and so you have a right to be skeptical, but we're pretty much getting to being done. All that's left: concerts, plays, and events. One topic. Gonna hit you with quickies on 25 of them. We also have calamities. 9 horrible things that have happened to me. A 1-page story called You're Walking Too Slowly. Ryan and Eric will probably puke when they hear that because I'm pretty sure they've heard it before. And then 4 different comedic thoughts. I was going to put 2-3 pages of that in because I have dozens of pages of thoughts like these. I have always intended to do stand-up comedy, and I don't know why I haven't. Wasn't as big a priority as I thought, I guess. I'm not chicken to do it because I'll stand up and talk to anybody, but I just never did. Okay, concerts, plays, and events. Just gonna highlight top couple dozen. First concert I ever went to was the Edgar Winter Group back in the 70s somewhere with my buddies Cook and Lacey. Cindy and I were in New York City on a 4-day trip, and they announced a concert, the 12-12-12 concert, December 12th of 2012. Hurricane Sandy had just hit New Jersey's shore, which was a huge tourist destination, and they put together this charity concert. And they had 11 names that you wouldn't believe at this show. Crazy. The best of them. Paul McCartney. Oh, and each of these people played 20 to 30 minutes. Almost all of them. There were a couple exceptions. So, Paul McCartney, kind of a big deal to see an ex-Beatle. Bruce Springsteen, who is a New Jersey guy. I saw Springsteen at 12-12-12 and a separate time in Omaha. That's an infamous concert because I was caught sleeping during the concert, which I've become famous for. The Rolling Stones were there. The Who was there. So that was just a phenomenal one. Went to Minneapolis and saw Aerosmith and Madonna. That was cool. Went to Ames, Iowa, Iowa State University's stadium, and watched Billy Joel, who I saw 3, 4, 5 times. Billy Joel and Elton John, the only time I saw Elton John. And they had their pianos facing one another, and it was just awesome. I mean, how many hits have those two dudes had? I saw Boston when Boston was huge, and Boston was known for some innovations way back in the 70s that now are nothing. But they, for instance, would lay down tracks of music one on top of the other. had never been done. And they had some huge hits at the time. I've seen kinda several to lots of performances on Broadway. Always cool just to go to Broadway. And some of those shows were beyond fabulous, and some were kind of duds, which surprised me on Wall Street, on Broadway, but quite a few there. Then the Broadway productions would put on traveling shows. I subscribed for a long time to the Broadway touring shows package at the Orpheum, always the Orpheum. It had something to do with the ropes and curtains and getting their sets in and out. So I saw dozens of those over the years. I saw Cher on one of her farewell tours. She was at the Ralston Arena. One of her farewell tours, Phil? Yes, I believe she's had 3, and they are all packed. I mean, just the show of her in the different costumes. Back when there was the Sonny and Cher show on Sunday nights, she was famous for these gowns that were unbelievable. If the guy who did the designing of those gals come to me, I'll tell you. Probably a name you've heard, but isn't coming to me. The Doobie Brothers, saw them, pretty sure 3 times, and they would start their concert with Jesus Is Just All Right by Me. And it was one of their biggest hits, and they'd start that up with the cymbals, basically, are the first thing you hear, and the crowd would go ape. Eagles, I think I saw them 3 times, most recently in Des Moines and in New Orleans. Des Moines, I flew in Mary Kay Mueller and Old Bud, and we zipped up there, saw the concert. The next morning, I flew to New Orleans and saw the Eagles again 2 nights later. Classic great rock concert. They had a bazillion hits. I saw Earth, Wind, and Fire when I was in my teens and not yawning. I saw them at that outdoor arena at Harrah's in Council Bluffs. Name's not coming to me. Geez, that was great. They were like my fave back when I was 16, 17, 18, 19. So that was a biggie. There is, of course, the famous Cindy in New Jersey Prudential Center, Fleetwood Mac. How did you like it, hon? I would have enjoyed it more if you weren't singing. Yeah, well, God, she had a rough voice. When Peter Frampton produced Frampton Comes Alive, he came to Lincoln, to Pershing Auditorium. How things have changed. Pershing sat 6,000. He had like the biggest set of albums, 2 or 3, in like damn near in history. One of the biggest selling records of all time. And he's in Persian. Weird. In addition, his opening act was Gary White, who had 2 big hits, Our Love Is Alive and Oh, Dreamweaver. I saw the Jackson 5, yes, including Michael, in Kansas City at their outdoor concert venue. And that, again, hindsight, that was totally weird. That, I don't think, seated 5,000 people. And, I mean, it's the freaking Jackson 5 who were massive. I saw Journey, and I only bring them up because they had so many hits. I mean, they didn't play a thing that you didn't know. Most concerts, it's 80% the famous stuff, 20% off their new album that they're touring off of. And everybody barfs at the 20. I saw Kiss a couple of times. They had a handful of famous songs, but the hook with them was they were dressed in these outlandish costumes. High heels like that tall, a foot. Crazy. Neil Diamond, I saw Neil 2, 3 times. Fabulous. My favorite Neil song is Love on the Rocks. Love on the rocks ain't no big surprise. Pour me a drink and I'll tell you some lies. I love that song. Not the way I sing it. Omaha Symphony. I used to go to the Symphony, but it was, they call it long hair music. Nah, not my deal. I mean, I wasn't into Mozart and the like. But more importantly, Omaha Symphony would have a season 8-10 shows of what they called the Super Pops. And the way that worked, they'd have some famous or soon to be famous singer or band come out and sing or play with them. I only went when I got invited by my banker, Jim Fiddle at Mid-City Bank. He had the entire first row at the Orpheum, and then first row at the new venue, whose name escapes. And the first row had 20 seats in it. So over the years, you know, I'm trading in women, they're trading me in. And you know, like a Fifi went to 5 or 6, and a Sherry went to 3 or 4. A Cindy went every month for like 3 years. And so it wasn't Phil. Fiddle's wife, Pat, had fallen in love with Cindy. And they'd always sit together and I'd mix. So that was a little weird. Roxy had a daughter, just a bitch, who lived in Portland, Oregon. And there was a group from there, the classic Omaha Symphony Super Pops group called Pink Martini. And they weren't the kind of music that anybody listened to. But oh, good Lord, was that a good concert? And their songs had great melodies, they had great lyrics. They did Bolero, which was famously in the movie 10. Look it up. And Bolero took 8 minutes. The head of Pink Martini played piano classically if he wanted. He didn't want to. And he made an arrangement of Bolero that is 8 minutes long that is out of this world. Somehow, I think I've already talked about Ringling Brothers' last show going solo. When Roger Waters was with Pink Floyd, not a group I ever gave a poop about, Pink Floyd did a presentation, for lack of a better word, and I'm sure there is one, called The Wall. The album is famous, has some classic hits on it, and the premise of the thing was that they had 2, 3, 4 people building a wall as the first act went on. And first act, an hour to get this thing built. It was 20 feet tall, 50 feet across, and it was made of these giant blocks that must have been some kind of a styrofoam deal. And they built that wall. In the second half, they knock it down, and the music tracks both of those things. It wasn't the best music I've ever been fortunate enough to listen to, but I think that was the coolest concert I ever went to. Stevie Wonder, oh my God. If I was an Earth, Wind, and Fire fan, I was Stevie Wonder times 10. I knew every song after every album. One of my all-time favorite songs as I knew backwards and forwards, that came off Fulfilling This First Finale. Look that up. Tom Petty, Sneaky. He probably totally acting. He was the guy who looked unlike anybody else, like he couldn't believe that people loved him so much. It was just obvious. And again, probably an act, Cynical Phil says. Lastly, ZZ Top. And they probably had 5 big hits. They were the coolest act I ever saw. They just stood there and played their music and barely moved. I mean, it was just, and just standing there. So that was fun. Let's see, concerts, calamities. Where'd my calamities go? Bear with. I gotta hunt them up. Here we go. Okay. You guys have recently heard this, apparently not before recently. The biggest screw up of my life was letting Sherry get to the point that she divorced me. And I think you find that incredible because I don't know who is and isn't a Sherry fan these days, but she isn't the most endearing person, married to Mike, various other, but the worst thing I ever did or had happen to me or took part in, because of its impact on so many people at so many levels. Number one, calamity. Number two, Adam's suicide. I'm not gonna say anything about it because I'm already choking. Up, and I never know when thinking about him is gonna cause that reaction. Number two. Number three was Fifi's suicide. Probably not a shock. Number four, my psychiatrist, Ryan's, Sarah Jones, we met in 2003, so our 20-year anniversary, I think this March. And she wanted to kind of go back and reconstruct history. And she and I, led by her, determined that I went hypomanic when I was 25. And hypomanic is a level just below manic, where you have boundless energy, boundless creativity, and my careers kicked into high gear at age 25. So kind of a logical starting place. But I had 20 incredible years from the perspective of creativity, work ethic, but after 20 years or so, it turned on me and I became manic, not hypomanic. And I mean, it ruined me for a while, and in certain areas forever. Ended up selling CFO services which was my business baby, which is now unbelievably 30 years old, previously mentioned, and selling that, it just put a hole through my heart. Number 6, well, you'll get this, Peyronie's disease. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And I've always thought of that as God's revenge for having too much fun with that thing. Next up, my time with Cindy declining. Early on in the Chickies section, I mentioned I haven't been good at all in uncomfortable conversations and or arguments with women primarily, sometimes in the rest of my life. And so the shame is there were like stair steps of my life with Cindy declining. She knew nothing directly about them. Might have been able to put it together, but I didn't say anything. 2 more. One that you know well. I don't know, maybe when I hit 60-ish, my memory started getting crappy. Therefore, say 5 years later, it has reached, as you would expect, it would be progressive, new levels of crappiness. So that's been frustrating. And then the last one, I don't think you know anything about. Bankruptcy. When I started CFO Services, we had nothing that didn't have debt attached to it. And we got to a point where we were behind on everything. And if I hadn't come up with Doug Smith creative financing, we would have been under. Yeah, that was a little stressful. Let me do the comedy things real quickly. Just 3. I believe you know I have a little OCD issue, obsessive compulsive disorder. And I have a document that is a 1.5 pages, single-spaced, about OCD things I do. And I laugh. It is hilarious. It's also, in its own way, kind of sad. Here's a very recent thought. I've been told that before you die, you need to get your affairs in order. And so I gave that some thought and think I've done a pretty good job. I had an affair with Beverly in 1982. Had an affair in 86 with Trish. And an affair in 89 with Betty. So I have my affairs in order. And no, I never have freaking cheated on anybody. Now, part of that is I have a nothing personality, and, therefore, what are my chances? Okay, I'm gonna close with, you're walking too slowly. I'm just gonna read it. We're at 30 minutes. This will put us at 35. I'll be done, with the possible exception of a brief 3-hour summary. Okay, you're walking too slowly. It was a windy, rainy, cold Nebraska spring morning. My teammates and I were bundled up as best we could against that perfect storm, a bad Midwestern weather. A high school golf tournament was the last place we wanted to be, but there we were. The Aurora Country Club, a 9-hole small town course, would host the next 5 hours of our lives. My team counted on me as the #1 player on the team. I was in the anchor position, the cleanup hitter, typically posting our best score. My average for the year was in the high 70s, not a world beater score, but not bad for a skinny kid with more desire than talent. In this tournament field, given the weather conditions, we thought any score under 80 would have a chance to win the individual medal. That weather was miserable for all concerned, but especially, I thought, for me. Eyeglasses were a nightmare to keep dry in those conditions, and my black horn rims made a classic nerdy fashion statement as they impaired my vision. A cap, an umbrella, and a series of dry towels did little to assuage my misery, and my golf glove was irretrievably soaked within minutes. My golf clubs felt like javelins in those conditions, ready to fly out of my hands and outpace the golf ball. With that attitude, I pouted my way around the golf course. As we rounded the turn after the front 9, we went into the clubhouse to post our 9-hole scores. Our coach, Vince Aldrich, looked less than pleased. He stared at me until I sheepishly caught his eye. He used to call me Doosan, not Dawson. Whoa! I saved me. Hold on, we'll get a little more stability. That's pretty good. So he asked, Doosan, what did you shoot? About a 49? Which would be 10 strokes higher than normal on a 9-hole course. And my eyes were saucers as I looked down at the mushy scorecard in front of me. It did indeed show exactly a 49. I shivered and stammered out a quick, "How did you know?" His reply, "When you're playing well, nobody can keep up with you. You can't wait to get to your next shot. you almost run around the course. So when I see you out there moping your way around, I knew about what you were shooting. Change your attitude. You're walking too slowly. And with that, he turned away. With Coach Vince's words, I went out, put my head down, and walked faster. I played the same 9 holes in 39 strokes. Well, I wish I could tell you the weather took a turn for the better, thus the amazingly better result. It didn't. I wish I could tell you I won that tournament. I didn't, but I won something more important that day. I won a lifelong lesson in attitude, in making your own breaks, in faking it until you make it. So whenever life begins to get me down, I try to remember Vince's words of wisdom imparted on a skinny high schooler. You're walking too slowly. And I remember those words regularly when I look at my youngest son, Eric Vincent Dawson.